So often when we think about being dependent, we think about it as being frustrated, stuck, or just something we really need to break free from. Yet is that really what it means? We'll discuss dependence, what it means, and more on this episode of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom.
Where did do go?
Isn't that what I just did?
You did do. It's a little different.
Yeah, do.
That was it.
Okay. I thought that's what I did, but hey.
That's okay. How are you today?
I'm okay. Go ahead. How are you?
I'm doing well.
No, you look like you had something to say.
Well, we have a broadcast to do. I hope I have something to say.
All right. There you go. All right. I'll back off now.
Back off from what? All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where we have each week a conversation around a topic. This week's topic, as I mentioned in the opening, is dependence. Today, we'll talk about what it means. And as we go through this conversation, if you have thoughts or ideas you'd like to share, please feel free to share them in the comments, as we know it'll add value to the show. We love when we get comments. And you might have something that others hadn't considered or that we hadn't considered as it relates to our topic. And then at the end of the conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote, that we hope might help you figure out today, or maybe somewhere down the road, how to take your next step along your own unique pathway to success. So please feel free to share those comments, whether you are doing it in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or
LinkedIn Live.
Yes.
I gave a pause just for a build-up today.
Little dramatic effect. I like it.
Pregnant pause, right?
Yes. Yes, LinkedIn Live. We've welcomed those comments, and we will go back and respond to them, and usually we'll share them within the show. So before we kick off our conversation, though, we always start with our celebrations. What are you celebrating today, Bob?
Tom, I'm going to celebrate the fact that people actually pay attention to this program more than you realize sometimes.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me more.
I had a person that I was hanging out with a little bit over the last couple of days, and that person told me, one, that they learned about my dislike for dirty dishes in the sink from this program. They also gave me a good critique of the do with a, you really shouldn't do that ever again.
What? Really?
Yes.
It's just feedback, right?
Of course. You don't realize when you do this, and I'm sure you've had this feeling where someone's like, they say a comment to you about something we said or talked about, and you're like, really? Wow, I didn't realize that registered with you enough that you would, one, remember it, two, bring it to my attention. So
the value we share does have an impact on others.
It does.
Fascinating.
Yeah, there you go. How about you?
I am celebrating, interestingly enough, dependence, and sometimes the lack of the need for it. So,
did you win the lottery over the weekend?
No.
Okay. All right.
No. So as we were going through last week, my wife was involved in this World Championships for women's lacrosse as an official.
There you go.
I was
filling
it all in
with her and not you. Funny.
Correct. And she had been saying, well, I've had the bronze medal game for a number of years, so I probably won't have it. And so I was not planning to be around for it because I had an event, a lacrosse tournament that I was assigning, a women's lacrosse tournament, and I assigned the officials to it. And as it turns out, on Thursday night, I believe, she found out that she had the bronze medal game. And, I was a little stressed about, well, there's an event, and I usually like to want to be there on site just in case things don't go as they planned. And I was like, you know what? They don't have to always be dependent on me. There are officials who go to games without somebody there just in case there's an issue. And, so I asked a couple people to just make sure things got started smoothly. And I'm celebrating that they were there and willing, and that I could depend on them to do what needed to be done so that I could go do something else. And as it turns out, the game was very exciting, ended up in 3 overtimes. And I would have been really sad if I had not been able to be there. So that's my celebration.
Wow, I like that. That's a good one. You had told us on Friday that you were trying to figure this out.
And I did.
All right. There you go. And it sounds like you did it in a different way than you might have in the past.
Yeah, I think I was less concerned about it. I think I just, that's the way I'm
about it, or more willing to consider alternatives. I don't think you're less concerned. You don't strike me as a guy who's less concerned about things, just from where I sit.
Yeah. No, I think that I had my bases covered, and so I felt comfortable that everything was going to be okay. I had a couple of people that I could depend on, that I knew would be able to get things going, and that I'd get there when I got there, and everything was going to be okay. And they could reach me by phone if they had to, and it worked out well.
So a facet of this renegade dependence that we're talking about this week, and I'm making the shift to the topic as we go.
Really?
It is having a supportive community.
Certainly. Part of it.
So we are dependent on that supportive community to help us achieve what we're trying to achieve. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's I wonder about the word supported. Yes, we need that. Having them be supported is helpful. It's also just a community. We wouldn't, I wouldn't be needed at that event if there were never issues. And so sometimes those people are not, the community is not supportive. They actually are challenging what you are doing. And so you need to be there. So I think in all, the value of the community sort of not only creates the need to be dependent, I think, and it also provides the support that we need. So clearly there were people there who were willing, as a part of my community, to help out. And if not for those people who aren't always supportive of what's going on, there wouldn't really be an issue. Like if every tournament went off with never having a complaint, a concern, a question, an issue.
If only, right?
Well, then what's the need for me?
Right.
And I think that's part of, in some cases, a little bit about what dependency means, is how the community around us engages, connects with us, and the value that we provide. Does that make any sense?
A little bit. And we talked before the program that we were going to fumble our way through this because we're trying to figure it out as we go. So to the people paying attention, this may sound like we haven't polished this, because frankly, we haven't. And I think as I think through it this morning, another facet of the dependence is that as we develop a deeper trust in our own knowledge, experience, and perspective, and our ability to gather feedback, whether good or bad, doesn't matter, just feedback, I think that allows us to become less dependent on things that we have always assumed we needed to have in place. So I'm thinking of the business owner who leaves a really good job with a company and goes out on her own and starts a business and struggles for a first year or two, like so many people do. But then the third year suddenly starts to thrive.
Yeah, and I think part of it is the way we look at the word dependence. And I think I sort of shared that a little bit in my opening, is I think sometimes it's seen as a challenge, as something we want to get away from, to break free from. You know, why do people leave good jobs or any job to then go start their own business? Because they feel like they're relying on, they have to rely on someone else to get it done. Yet, in some regards, once they take that new position, they are still dependent, just not, it's just in a different way. And I think that's that move is seen as creating independence. In reality, it's just creating a different type of dependence, rather that you're dependent on someone else to pay you in a job or to have benefits and all that, and then you become your own boss, and now you are dependent on others that you can find to pay you so that you can have the things that you had when you were in this other role. So I think so often we think we are creating independence, and in some regards we are, because we are moving from those things that are controlled by others to what's controlled by us. And yet we are still, there is a part of this. And I think that dependence doesn't mean that you're not independent. It just means that that's a part of what we'll always be, is that we have to rely on others and other parts of ourselves for us to be able to move forward.
Maybe what it means ultimately then, Tom, is having a better understanding of our place in that whole ecosystem of however we choose to operate, whether it's to generate money or to generate change or whatever. Really understanding that juxtaposition between independence and dependence. You know, last week we talked about independence very easily, I thought.
Yeah.
This week we're struggling a little bit, honestly, about the idea of dependence, even though I think it's a big part of what happens. Whether you're a team leader, you're dependent on the people that are working with you.
Of course.
You know, and we haven't really talked about that part of it, but there's a dependence, but there's also an independence that you have to have both sides of it, because if you're totally dependent on them for everything, then if they say, hey, we're not going to do that, that might be tipping the scales too far. And I think that's the thing. When we talked about independence, we never talked about being too independent. But with dependence, I think you can be too dependent. I think also you can be too not dependent.
Yeah, I almost think that the people, that there's a feeling of there's one, not the other, and I actually believe that they are both beneficial. It's just how much the scale tips one way or the other, and in some regards, they aren't even connected. You know, you can be
could tip differently at 9 a.m. and at 9 p.m.
Of course,
it's not you don't set it on Tuesday and it's that way for the rest of your life. It's an up and down.
Correct. I think that just the word dependent has this connotation that is not helpful to people. Is that it causes this feeling of like, why can't I do this by myself? Why does someone else have to be a part of it? Why do I have to rely on, wait on, depend on someone else who I can't control? And that's one of the challenges. And yet so much of part of who we are and what we do and our possibilities for success is truly dependent on others. And I think just so often that there's this feeling like you're either independent or you're not, or you're dependent. And I think that we have the opportunity and the need for all of that. Because if we were truly independent and we had no support from anyone else and nothing else around us, you'd just be living in a void. And I don't know how that.
You certainly wouldn't be growing.
It would be challenging, that's for sure. Because how are you going to grow?
Right.
There's no food to eat. There's no anything. There's no people to buy from you. There's no people to support and care for you. There's, so I think that the idea of being wholly independent almost doesn't exist. And in the same way, I think that you can't be wholly dependent.
I was going to say, yep.
Because you have the opportunity, because you are making your own choices for the most part. I guess there are situations, sadly, where people are completely dependent on someone else, medically, and they wouldn't be alive if not for a machine or something like that. And so I think that's one side of it. I think as I try to think about my one thing today, when I think about dependence and what it means, I think to me what it means is that it's not as constraining as I think we often think it is. We sort of look at it as, one of those words that I don't like to use, as a negative, rather than just, this is a part of reality. Is that a part of reality is that we can't do everything we need all by ourselves. And that there's value in being dependent. We'll get to that later this week. So I just think that as we take a look at how we define dependence, that there's the opportunity to define it in a way that has value.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Wow, that was good.
How about you?
I think the thing I've realized as we were talking is what you said, which is dependence and independence are connected, and you can't have one without the other, and you can't have too much of one or the other. And that there's I don't want to say there's a battle, but at times I think there is a battle between those two. And we are dependent, not wholly, ideally, but we are dependent on our customers. We're dependent on the people that supply us things. We're dependent, if we're a team leader, you're dependent on your team. You're dependent on your customers. You're dependent on the IT guys that have to make sure the computers work. And you're dependent on the person who makes sure that the parking lot is safe on a snowy day. And none of us could do all those things ourselves.
Correct.
And so look how many businesses you see where they start outsourcing roles as soon as they start making money. I'm going to get a bookkeeper. Oh, I'm going to get someone to do my taxes. I'm going to get someone who's going to handle marketing for me. Because they realize fully independent you can't achieve as much, right?
I believe. I don't know that that's whole. I think each case is different. I think it's very challenging because now you're the one person doing everything. And I think we know sometimes that means that you're really not doing anything.
Right. And I think that's how new people as leaders and new people as owners, and they fall into that trap. I certainly did. First time I led, I felt like I had to know all the ideas. I didn't listen to the people that I was working with. It had to come from me. They hired me to lead, so they must believe I have all the ideas, so I'm going to do what Bob thinks. And then I realized being an effective leader meant really listening to other people and helping them come together to form ideas that could move us forward.
Sure.
So I was dependent on them in a very different way than I expected. At first, I thought I was dependent on them to do the work for me. Mm-hmm. Then I realized I was dependent on them to build the most successful team possible.
Yeah, and I think that probably the reverse was true for them. They initially thought that they were dependent on you for every idea, every information,
yep,
everything that needed to be done. And I think that that's why those two are so connected, is that they shift, or what they mean shift, based on the situation that you're in and based on your own knowledge, experience, and perspective of what you think, how you would define dependency or independence.
Wow. My my mind is blown. There's a lot of ideas embedded in this.
Well, I think it's an interesting thing. I think one of the reasons I love the show or the concept of it is we pick something and we start talking about it. How often do you talk about dependence or independence or any of the other topics that we talk about in a way that makes you pause to consider, maybe there is a different perspective. There's other knowledge out there. There's people with different experiences that will change. And I think the experience of just having the conversation, you can't really go through the conversation. And I think one of the things I love about it as well is we have a conversation. You share ideas. I share ideas. We kind of see how they fit, how it impacts each of us. And then, I'm not sure we ever come to a conclusion. The other thing I think, like one of us is right and the other is wrong, as you know, I hate those words. And more that
folks, that's 3 words Tom dislikes that he's mentioned today. He's on fire.
It's a Monday morning.
Maybe I could set up the bingo board.
That would be a good that would actually be an interesting game to play. Is all right, well, who does what? Who does how many times does Bob run? Did Bob run his hands through his hair? Yep. Okay. That's B7. It's a good idea.
I like it. We may have to do that
as a way to engage people and be like, oh yeah, you hit bingo.
I think Jordan would like that idea a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's an interesting concept of a way to and I think just going back to the idea is that we don't come to conclusions. We're not telling people this is what they should or do. I don't say that that no one should ever use the words that I don't find value in.
Right.
It's just what my knowledge, experience, and perspective, what's real for me. And I think when we can have conversations like this and people can share their thoughts and ideas and both walk away and feel like, that was interesting. And I'm sure there are days you walk away and be like, I didn't really get a whole lot of value out of that conversation.
Never, not once, Tom. I've never said that. Not to your face, ever.
and even if you did, like, that doesn't bother me because it's not my job. And whether it's you and I or any two people having a conversation, if you can have a conversation around a topic and walk away and say, interesting. So often, I think today, people can't have a conversation around a topic because they feel like I have to change your mind.
Right.
Because what's real for me has to be what's real for you. And so we, one, don't listen. Two, we don't really consider their perspective. And three, we feel like we have to come to an agreement. We're all unique. And so the chance that we're all going to think the same way about a conversation or about a topic. And I would say that to me is one of the greatest things about that is it has allowed me, I don't want to speak for you, to really think differently about some things and to take and say, this is what I was thinking when I heard this perspective from Bob or from a comment or from someone else, and like made me really think even more and sort of in some ways solidified or other times sort of dissolved what I thought was real, which is, I think, is one of the reasons I love the word real is that it changes. So before we get too far off on why I love the show, I hope that people found some value today, whether you find it today or maybe you look back later and be like, those guys were talking about dependence and independence. And I think that's a fascinating thing. As you mentioned, someone shared shared feedback with you. And I would imagine that there are lots of other people who have listened to this one time or another and who just never shared with us their feedback, which is okay. And then because we just have to keep adding our value out there so that others can be impacted a little bit or many times an awful lot. So if you do have thoughts or ideas, want to share your one thing about what dependence means, or if you want to share something about the show, feedback, Maybe you think today's Antidote Bingo would be a really cool thing because there are clearly things that Bob and I do each day. One would definitely be, okay, do we have technical difficulties? That might be like somewhere off in a corner because although it does happen more than we probably would prefer. Anyhow, please feel free to share your thoughts and ideas as we welcome them. And we will be talking about this topic, dependence, all week long in our Ring of Renegades Facebook group that we hope that if you are not yet a member, you will join us in the conversation and join the group where we are helping people take their next step along their own unique pathway to success. So we look forward to seeing you there. If not, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time for our next episode of Today's Antidote. Have a great day, everybody.
Embrace the renegade in you.
Embrace the renegade in you would be like the center. Everybody gets that one.
There you go.
Because 99.9 times we do that.
Didn't in the beginning.
We did not in the beginning. Yes, it has changed. All right, everybody, go out and make it a great day. We will see you soon. Thanks for listening to Today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.